everybody, welcome back up to the Vinyl Attic. Hope you had a nice record store day. We hit Music Millennium this afternoon, waited till after the crowds died down, which was a little sad because I missed the thing that I wanted, which is the new John Lennon Live EP. It was all sold out. But I did get something really cool. When we were doing our 100 count through, number 52, if you remember, was Thin Lizzy's Jailbreak. And I picked up this. Look at this nice. This is Jailbreak, the alternative versions. I can't wait to crack this open and listen to it. These are alternative tracks, remastered, remixed, a new way of listening to the classic 1976 Thin Lizzy album. Cozy got a great Taylor Swift 7-inch, the Fortnite 7-inch on white vinyl that she's very excited about. So another record store day in the bag. You win some, you lose some. Maybe I'll find that John Lennon record somewhere else. But we're in our 100 count through. We're counting through 100 albums. And we're doing something that we haven't done yet, which is a compilation or greatest hits albums. Greatest hits albums are kind of like, do we count them as albums because they weren't put together by artists as being a complete picture. But sometimes they are. I mean, there are some exceptions of albums that are not. George Harrison's Greatest Hits that was put out by Capitol in 1976, he hated that because they used one side of George Harrison solo and the other side of George Harrison Beatles songs, and it wasn't really a true George's Greatest Hits albums. Some Greatest Hits albums are huge, like the Eagles' Greatest Hits is the largest selling album of all time, ever. But some compilations are reflections of what the artist wants to share with you. The way they put the songs together, the order that the songs are in, the things that are in the compilation, the things that are left out. There are choices made by the artists themselves and somehow reflect the vision of the performer. Today we got to talk about this album if we're going to include it. If we're going to include one Greatest Hits album, it's got to be Neil Young's Decade. Comes out October 1977, reflecting his career starting with Buffalo Springfield, all the way up to his most recent album that came out earlier in 1977, American Stars and Bars, with a killer alternative version of Like a Hurricane. This is a triple album. It's pretty huge. Includes handwritten notes from Neil on the songs, and becomes a kind of a staple of the music collector's world. A lot of people, Neil Young has a ton of records. Some of them sold well, some of them didn't. Harvest obviously was being the giant of the time. There's 5 songs from Harvest on this collection, but others weren't. And so he has a chance here to create an arc of his career, of this decade, from 1967 to 1977, from Buffalo Springfield to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young to solo Neil Young, to paint this picture of his career, and includes a lot of tracks that hadn't been released or had been released as singles, like Ohio by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, or his original Love is a Rose version, which was a minor hit for Linda Ronstadt. There's like a bunch of stuff on here. I mean, in fact, the very first song is a Buffalo Springfield outtake, and we're sort of off to the races. But for a lot of people who, buying a record was a big deal, you didn't just sort of stream everything automatically. You had to go to the record store and put your money down and buy it. To be able to dive into Neil Young's career, you could get each album, which had a couple good songs on it, or you got a compilation album. And this, by being a triple one, is sort of a complete picture of all the best of his career. It's all the best, and you get it all. So there's a whole bunch of people in the 1970s and the 1980s who the only Neil Young album they have is this one. This is the only Neil Young album they have. So that means that some of the lesser songs, like Sugar Mountain, which was a B-side that's included here, become staples, become the kind of workhorses of Neil Young's career, because everybody has this album. And as somebody who went to college in the early 80s, this is where I discovered this album, because there were a couple stoners on my hall in my dormitory, top floor Dickie at Oxford College, who had this album, and they played it all the time. And you'd walk by a room, and one day they'd be playing some of the Buffalo Springfield stuff, and then they'd be playing some of the longer pieces like Cortez the Killer, and you're like, what the hell? This is all Neil Young. This is all Neil Young. So this album for a lot of people was a gateway into the world of Neil Young. It was a greatest hits package. It wasn't Harvest. It wasn't Comes a Time, which was the album that follows this. It wasn't, Zuma Beach. It was Decade. It became sort of this picture. Now, there's an interesting argument that Dave Marsh, the rock critic, made, is that in creating this picture of the arc of his career, in selecting the handful of songs that are just amazing pieces of work, and leaving the songs that might be a little bit more filler-ish, that aren't quite as memorable, and putting together on this album and presenting it to the public, including with these outtakes that didn't make it on the record, but you, the artist, wanted to share, that you are essentially crafting a picture of your career that's not totally reflective of the full body of work, because all the album filler stuff gets laid off. And what people end up with is this jam-packed 6 sides of brilliant Neil Young songs that go on to influence a whole generation of people in the 80s, because this becomes their one and only Neil Young album. And so Marsh makes the argument is that, he sort of turns himself into a Dylan, or sort of elevates himself, Neil Young, to a higher status, because we're just getting a small little picture of the total picture of the career, which isn't all, Heart of Gold, isn't all the sort of the classics, the songs that we know. But the stuff on here with Crazy Horse is so good. The long jams. I mean, I think, between stuff like Tonight's the Night, and some of the the newer stuff like a Hurricane, and some of the unreleased stuff like Campaigner, which is this kind of great song about even Richard Nixon has got soul. It's just, this stuff becomes the sort of Bible of California, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Laurel Canyon, like that whole scene. This becomes the kind of Bible for that period. So it was a great way for a lot of people, and I think now in the streaming era, when people are going back and discovering vinyl, they're really not going back to the greatest hits albums. Why go to a greatest hits albums when you can stream the hits? You're going for the deeper cuts. But there are some greatest hits albums that really reflect a purposeful vision of the artist to present themselves in a certain way that is similar to an album that was recorded over the course of a summer or something. That this in of itself is a work of art. So there's an argument to be made. I think a lot of us, kind of poo-poo greatest hits album. Neil Young's Decade really set the stage for LP box sets, which became kind of a thing in the 80s. 3 records. It was a lot of work to play these 3 records, but it was worth it. All right, I wanted to just got to give some credit to the greatest hits album, Neil Young Decade. You don't need to go anywhere else. I mean, Neil continues to make great music. He's going out on tour. He's performing it at protests with Bernie. Neil Young cannot be stopped. But this is the good stuff. This is the place to start for Neil if you want to dive into his career, Neil Young's Decade. Okay, I wanted to say a little bit about that. All right, next week we're going to talk about something that was inspired by Buffalo Springfield. We're going to take a trip to the Paisley Underground with Rain Parade. We're going to talk about their album's Emergency Third Rail Power Trip and how that kind of linked generations. And there's a direct link to this Neil Young album that we will discuss next week. So stay tuned. And I hope you enjoy these conversations about record albums, because we all love to spin them round. Okay, well, you know what I'm going to say. Neil Young, good God. He just is still a voice, still making amazing music. Neil Young matters. There he is, a little younger and less wise. Neil Young matters. This album, for so many of us, this is the sound of our freshman dormitory. This album matters. You matter. Let's talk about it.